Hey, what's up guys? Today we will see how to use correlation ID in Node.js applications, especially in any server-based application where we have input HTTP request and like lot of business function and also like outgoing HTTP. So I will expose a server which will have get and post. So someone will call that API using a get or post method, and I will assign a correlation ID or use their correlation ID so that it can be traced. Like if they report some error, then we can say that okay, the error was not from our side, the error was from the maybe the downstream, or maybe the error was from our side. This is the correlation ID, we have reprocessed it, or some other business logic we are correcting it. So it will help us to debug further and go and get a deep dive into the root cause. So let's check. See here I am using Axios. We'll come to this later. Body parser mainly we required. Express we required for exposing our API. Splunk logger is not required. UUID we required it. So we are using UUID 4. And we do using npm install until everything will get installed. And then we have our first entry point is app.js where we are starting a Express server using port 8085. And we are exposing two test APIs, post test and get test, and how we are doing it. So there is two files we have created, logger service ls and downstream. So it may be downstream or it may be some other business logic, and while calling this we will pass the logger information there. Okay, so let's see what logger service has. So in logger service is a class where we are importing UUID, and while constructing the logger service class, if the request correlation ID means the correlation ID that has been passed from the upstream is present, then we use their correlation ID, or else we create our own correlation ID and pass it to the downstream. And then we have our info and error message. So once we hit this API, it will initialize a logger service with the header.correlation ID. If it is not present, we will use our UUID. We will use our UUID 4. This is our condition. Similarly for get test also. Then we will print got request. And here we will print the got request body. So if you see the info part, here we have the correlation ID and we are printing the message. And after that, we will call the downstream API or our any business logic. So here we have the post API. If we go to downstream, and here we have post API and a get API. This is just a dummy API. It will be throwing error because they don't allow to pass any header. So how we will tell the downstream, okay, we have also, or how they will correlate with our correlation ID. So either similarly what we have passed the correlation ID. Similarly, they will also accept our correlation ID. If they don't accept, they in general will create similar approach or take similar approach like us and create a UUID, which is their correlation ID. So here we pass in the header section correlation ID, and then we get the correlation ID from the log.correlation ID. Isn't it simple? Yes. So let's open Postman. So in the Postman we have localhost 8085 get test, and in the header we have the correlation ID. So if I pass the correlation ID, we received okay. So if you see the message here, we have the correlation ID hello1 got request, which has been printed from here. This is the get request hello1. So we are printing got request. So this is, and hello1 is printed by this logger. This has been initialized. And if we don't pass it, we just take this out or delete it and send it. We can see that the correlation ID is been generated by our application. This is the UUID. Okay, so similar thing is for post also. If I send it, oops, this is post test. We got okay. So now if you see, I got request body, there was nothing in the body, so let us pass something in the body. Row JSON hello hello world beautify send received. Okay, okay, this is actually not JSON format, so it is not able to parse it. Okay, so this is not the main concern. So here you can see that it printed the got request body, and the correlation ID is this one. So while calling the next downstream, that is downstream.post API, downstream.post API. Here also we have the logs, log.info, log.error. So this is the error message. Actually, it is not able to call this API and it found error. We can see that error message failed with status code 400. Okay, and in that log error also we can see the same correlation ID. So in the Splunk and in Elasticsearch, wherever we are logging it, we can just filter out this correlation ID and we can get the logs for that particular transaction. And we can get the root cause like, okay, this failed due to error 400. This is from our service because we are not able to reach that. So it is not available. Okay, and if we pass the header section, the correlation ID. So similarly here we got the correlation ID as hello1. So that's all specifically for correlation ID, which is very much important in microservice based architecture because there are a lot of services running in microservice. So we need to group them together and we can do it using by correlation ID. So that's all folks. See you again in the next one. Bye bye.